elevation myocardial infarction. In a STEMI, blood flow to the heart is stopped because of a blockage in a coronary artery. Unlike other kinds of heart attacks, STEMIs show up very clearly on an electrocardiogram or ECG. Doctors use ECGs to measure electrical activity in the heart. The experimental iPhone app should help rescuers reacting to a possible medical emergency. They can perform an ECG and then take a picture of the test results with the camera on the telephone. They can then send that information ahead to hospital emergency room doctors. The iPhone app is the work of David Burt and his students at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. He says the app can help save lives by preparing doctors for the arrival of the STEMI patient as early as possible. He says doctors can mobilize their system so that they can perform a catheterization to unblock the artery or some other treatment. David Burt and his team tested the app 1,500 times over 3 American cellular telephone networks in a populated area. He said the app was successful within less than 10 seconds, about 94% of the time. The developers are now testing the iPhone app in rural areas where cell phone reception is more problematic than in cities. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Is the VOA Special English Development Report. The World Health Organization says obesity rates are rising in Pacific Island countries. So too are health problems linked to being overweight. The WHO says a major reason for the rising obesity rates is an increase in imported foods. It says many Pacific Islanders have replaced their traditional diets of vegetables and fruits with imported processed foods. Dr. Teemu Waganivalu is with the World Health Organization's South Pacific office in Suva, Fiji. He says many of the imported products lack nutritional value, but they are widely available, he says, and often cost less than healthier foods. He says, in some of the places, you'd be amazed to see how a bottle of Coke is cheaper than a bottle of water. Dr. Waganivalu says the increase in imported foods is only part of the problem. He says problems with agriculture production limit the availability of healthier foods, and a lack of physical activity among many Pacific Islanders only adds to the obesity problem. The WHO says more than 50% of the population is overweight in at least 10 Pacific Island countries. The rate is as high as 80% among women in the territory of American Samoa. Fiji had the lowest obesity rate at 30%. In all, almost 10 million people live in Pacific Island countries. The WHO estimates that about 40% of them have health disorders related to diet and nutrition. Diabetes rates are among the highest in the world. 47% of the people in American Samoa have diabetes. So do 44% of the people in Tokelau, a territory of New Zealand. By comparison, the diabetes rate is 13% in the United States, a country that has its own problems with rising obesity. Officials also note an increase in nutritional problems like anemia and not enough vitamin A in the diets of Pacific Islanders. Dr. Waganivalu says treating conditions related to obesity and diet puts pressure on limited health resources and budgets. Earlier this year, leaders of island nations met in Vanuatu for the first ever Pacific Food Summit. Dr. Waganivalu says the issues are finally getting the attention they deserve. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. You can post comments and find transcripts, MP3s, and podcasts of our programs at voaspecialenglish.com.
VOA Special English Development Report. Sending and receiving money by text message. Sharing crop prices. Just talking to a loved one far from home. These are some of the ways that mobile phones have changed lives in developing countries. Another way is through e-health, electronic health services. One example is a telephone hotline in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Callers can receive information about family planning and the prevention of unwanted pregnancies. They are able to speak privately with trained operators about birth control methods and about health clinics. The nonprofit group Population Services International and a partner launched the service in 2005. The United States Agency for International Development finances the program, and an agreement with the Vodacom company makes the service free to callers. We talked with Jamaica Corker on her cell phone at the Population Services International Office in the DRC. She said, "The hotline has given us an opportunity to take advantage of cell phone technology to reach people outside of our intervention zone with family planning messaging. The hotline allows them to call in no matter where they are and to ask us the information that we can provide." Jamaica Corker says more than 20,000 people called the hotline in 2008. More than 80% were men. She says this is mainly because men own most of the phones. The group also has family planning hotlines in Benin and Pakistan, and it is launching a mobile phone program to gather records on condom sales around Tanzania. The journal Health Affairs recently published an issue on e-health in the developing world. Editor Susan Dentzer says, e-health is improving lives in different ways. For example, in Rwanda, cell phone-based technologies are being used to keep track of drugs given to patients with HIV. Rwanda is at the leading edge of developing nations in using these technologies to advance health and health care. In South Africa, a campaign of text messages about HIV led to a large increase in calls to the National AIDS Helpline. And a program in Peru sends text messages to patients with HIV, reminding them to take their medicines. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. Tell us about eHealth services where you are. You can share ideas and find our programs at voaspecialenglish.com.
VOA Special English Development Report. Mobile phones have revolutionized the way people connect not only with family and friends, but also business services. A good example: services that let people use their phones to send and receive money. Two companies, Safaricom and Vodafone, launched the M-Pesa mobile money service in Kenya in 2007. Pesa means money in Swahili. The service operates much like a savings bank, which is important because plenty of Kenyans do not have bank accounts. Most of the early users were young men who worked in cities and wanted to send money home to rural areas. Now, customers can also use their M-Pesa accounts to pay bills, make purchases, or pay for services like taxis. Users pay a small amount for each transaction. Stephen Mbagua has a farm a half-hour's drive from the capital. He uses M-Pesa to receive money from his son and to pay bills. He says, "I used to go to Nairobi or to any bank to pay my bill, but now I don't go to Nairobi, I just pay my bill from here." Some businesses use the service to pay their employees. All across Kenya, there are stores and automated teller machines where M-Pesa users can add and withdraw money from their accounts. People can also transfer money to other mobile phone users, even those without an M-Pesa account. The other person receives a text message with a code to take to the local M-Pesa agent to get the money. All this pleases 22-year-old Philister Omari. She says, "It's very fast. The M-Pesa, they're available everywhere. So once you are going somewhere, you can drop, get some cash, and proceed." M-Pesa is improving economic conditions for many Kenyan families. British-based Vodafone has also teamed with local companies to offer the service in Uganda and Afghanistan. Safaricom says nearly 8 million people in Kenya now use M-Pesa. That number is expected to grow as more people use mobile phones. A recent report predicted that the number of mobile phone accounts worldwide will reach almost 4.5 billion this year. That is 12% more than last year and equal to 2/3 of the world's population. The report was from the European Information Technology Observatory. The group says the strongest growth